Hello everyone, what is up? Lamp TV here, bringing you a continuation of the Disc Priest video that I did earlier this week. Um, so a lot of people, or the people I've been talking to actually, like the majority of them, felt that the shorter version of the guides, the cut up ones, is actually the way to go. So I'm gonna stick with that tactic for now, as it gives me more motivation to keep going, as I can make more videos and then kind of tweak every sort of area that I'm going to talk about and really go into details without worrying about it being too long. So like overall, for me and for the people who've been watching, it seems like the way to go. So I'm going to stick with that. Right, I'm not really going to blabber on too much. I'm just going to go into the gist of things. In the previous video we were discussing gearing up and stat prioritization, and in this video I decided to talk about talents and glyphs. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be going through each tier and then briefly explaining the pros and cons about every talent, and then just tell you guys which one I personally prefer and think is the most optimal choice out of the three on each bracket. And then yeah, just gonna continue on like that until we're done, so to speak. So starting off with the level 15 talents, you have three sort of defensive spells, I like to call them. The first one is Desperate Prayer, the second one is Spectral Guise, which I have selected, and then there's Angelic Bulwark. Now, Desperate Prayer is pretty straightforward. As you can see, it's an insta-cast, 2-minute cooldown. It's gonna heal you for quite a good amount. But the reason why you're not picking this for PvP is because the cooldown is way too long. The healing is actually not that high. It's pretty high, but for a 2-minute cooldown it's pretty bad. So like 10 out of 10 times you should never go this talent, in my opinion anyway. The one I've picked, the Spectral Guise, is basically like almost like your bread and butter of survival. Even though it can be broken pretty easily, if you use it correctly, you can and like utilize its full potential, then you can yeah, you can really get some stuff done. You can get good fears in combination with the Angelic Feather. You can get away if you manage to get behind a pillar, dispel yourself in stealth. Like you can get out of sight for up to 6 seconds, which is really great. It's going to give you a lot of time to top yourself up if you actually manage to get away. The cooldown is almost non-existent. It's only 30 seconds, which is great. It doesn't have a cost. It's instant, you know, all that good stuff. So yeah, it's pretty much hands down the best one of these to get. Angelic Bulwark, however, is a passive that I've been considering. Because the cooldown is a little bit lower than Desperate Healer. It doesn't involve you getting another button, so to speak. It's like purely a passive spell. And yeah, what it does is that when you are brought below 30% health, you get an absorption shield equal to 50% of your maximum health for 20 seconds. This is quite a long time, and I do believe this shield is non-dispellable as well, so it kind of works like the Paladin Beacon of Light kind of bubble, I think, which is pretty okay, I guess. I'm not entirely sure what the cooldown is on the Paladin one, but this one has 90 seconds on it. So, I mean, it's still pretty long and risky to just completely put out Spectral Guise for this, but if this were to, say, go down to like a minute cooldown, I think I would actually take this over Spectral Guise, but at this point, most of the time she'll still stick to Spectral Guise, I think, but if this one would receive a buff of some sort or reduce cooldown, it could definitely become viable. Moving on to the level 30 tier, we have Body and Soul, Angelic Feather, and Phantasm. Body and Soul is pretty straightforward. Basically, whenever you shield yourself, you get a 60% movement speed increase for 4 seconds. It's pretty basic, pretty standard. However, it's not really spammable due to you having the weakened soul effect whenever you put your shield on yourself. So you can get the speed increase for 4 seconds, but the weakened soul is 12. So you're not going to be able to speed yourself up for 8 seconds, which is kind of meh. Sometimes if you really need that consistent movement speed increase, then the body and soul will not give that to you. However, what will give that to you is the angelic feather, which also gives 60% movement speed, but it has 3 charges, and what it does is you can put up feathers like this, and they last for 6 seconds, and they are spammable. There's no cooldown on them themselves, so you can do 3 in a row, which is pretty great. And then there is doesn't say how. Oh yeah, there it is, 10-second recharge. So I mean, the duration is 6 seconds. You have 3 stacks, and the recharge time is 10 seconds. Like by the time you use 3 of them, you're gonna have another one. So, like essentially, you could say you have 4, maybe even 5, depending on how much you need to spam them. But the point is, you have like basically infinite movement speed increase, which is pretty nice. It does, however, provide an extra button for you to press, but you know, we don't really have that many buttons in WoD anyway, so you know, it shouldn't really be a problem. Moving on to Phantasm, passive. Activating Fade removes all movement impairing effects and prevents your movement speed from being reduced for 5 seconds. This one is okay. I mean, this is literally the only slow breaker that the priest has, but if we look at Fade, which has 1.5 minute cooldown, it's a long cooldown. I mean, if you compare this to like Paladin Freedom, which has 2 charges, if you respect into the right thing, of course. Freedom has like 25-second cooldown. I mean, it's so much worse than the Paladin Freedom. So this is mostly the reason why I'm not taking this. If if Fade were to also have its cooldown reduced substantially, this would actually be pretty viable, because then you wouldn't have to worry about getting slowed and then preemptively try and position yourself for that. Because once you get slowed by like a DK monk rogue, you're basically going to get trained for quite some time, which I explained in the previous video as well. So yeah, that's mainly the reason why I don't pick that. And Angelic Feather is just a good spammable tool, which you can at least mitigate the slows a little bit, so you can still sort of get away if you get peels. Yeah, so this is kind of like your utility tier, like defensive utility, and then we get into the 3rd tier, which is the 45 talents. The one I've picked is the first one. It's called Surge of Light, and basically what it does is that your holy spells and smite have an 8% chance to make your next flash heal instant and cost no mana, and this can accumulate up to 2 charges. So in my opinion, in PvP this is kind of a no-brainer. It gives you another insta heal, doesn't cost any mana, which is great, and I'm gonna just explain that in later parts of the video as well, but I might as well do it now as well. The Divine Star is a talent which you can shoot in front of you like that, and the more targets you hit, the more chances you have to proc this Surge of Light, because every sort of touch of the star has a chance to generate a stack of this. So if you're really lucky and you do the star like this, because it has a really short cooldown as well, through like 10 people, you're almost guaranteed to get at least 1 surge stack, which is pretty great. And if you crit like a flash heal, it's almost 100k, so cost no mana and no cost, another insta cast heal pretty much, which is great to have. So that's literally the reason why this is 100% no-brainer for PvP, in my opinion. Mindbender, I mean, if you're having mana issues, you could go for this, but with the Spectral guys infinitely going into stealth and drinking, your mana shouldn't really be having a problem if you coordinate it with your teammates. I mean, yeah, it's pretty much the only reason why you take Mindbender if you have severe mana issues, but you shouldn't really if you play it correctly. I mean, I guess Mindbender gets like substantially more damage. I mean, substantially is very, very in parentheses there. I mean, sure, the damage is a difference, but in PvP it's not gonna be that much of a difference. So, yeah. The cooldown is 1 minute instead of 3, but it's kind of meh for PvP overall. Power Word Solace. Strike an enemy with a heavenly power, dealing 14,067 holy damage and an additional 1,710 holy damage over 9 seconds, restoring 2% maximum mana. As I was saying before, if you against all odds have mana issues, this is probably the talent you would go for instead, because in PvP you kind of tend to want to help DPS when you are like sort of ahead. If you don't have to spam heal, you should definitely try and help DPS, and Holy Fire is a great spell to use, which is the spell that's being replaced by this spell if you choose it. Not only will it give you 2% of your maximum mana, but it also does a little bit more damage, I believe. It actually does quite a lot more damage. And it's like, I'm not even spec'd into this, but most of the time when I'm PvPing, like my Holy Fire can crit for like 25, almost 30k, depending on if my trinket is up. So I mean, it's a really great backup DPS, and it also grants you a stack of Archangels, which gives you 5% extra healing done per stack, and you can consume it and it'll last 18 seconds, which is also pretty great. So yeah, there's a lot of cons with that. So if I were to take one talent instead of Surgeon Light, it would definitely be Power Word Solace. But as I said, like the insta healing and it not costing any mana kind of weighs out that 2% restoring mana. But if you feel like you want to have some extra damage in your comp, or just have fun in BGs and be like sort of a smite priest, you can definitely take this talent. It'll be a lot of fun. Definitely. Yeah, moving on to the next tier, we have the level 60 talents, which is Void Tendrils. Summons shadowy tendrils. Blah, can't talk. Rooting up to 5 enemy targets within 8 yards for 20 seconds or until a tendril is killed. This is a pretty powerful root. However, as the tooltip says, you can kill these roots, so they're obviously not going to last 20 seconds most of the time in PvP if your enemy is not severely brain dead. But yeah, I mean, this is not a bad talent. It has a 30-second cooldown. It's actually lower than Fear, I believe. No, it's the same cooldown as Fear, never mind. Yeah, you can root up to 5 targets for a pretty long time. In an arena situation, this talent, I would only take this talent against like heavy melee cleaves. If you already have a Fear on your team, like a Warlock or a Warrior, or you know that the Fears are just going to break instantly anyway, you can definitely go for this against instead of Psychic Scream, sorry. But against like 7-8 times out of 10, you're going to take Psychic Scream, because it's literally just, yeah, it's just the best of these 3, I think, in most situations. But like, actually this tier is like the first tier of the priests that actually have 3 viable spells, in my opinion. But yeah, as I mentioned, if you're against a heavy melee team and you know the Fear is going to break, or you already have too much Fear in your team, you can go Void Tendrils. In any other situation, you go Psychic Scream, and if you feel like you have the time and to make this beneficial, this Dominate Mind, or the old Mind Control, for those who've been playing the longer time, is actually also pretty viable in my opinion. If you feel like you are running a pretty powerful comp and you have the time to sit and cast this and maybe jump people off edges or take them into line of sight, this also, if you do this on, like, for instance, your kill target, the enemy healer won't be able to heal them because they become offensive to them. So it's kind of like the Cyclone, where you cyclone your kill target at low HP because you don't have any follow-up CC, so they can't be healed. This works kind of in the same way as well. So if you can, you know, get this off in a really nice position and have your team protect you, you can really, really buy some time with resetting, diminishing return. So yeah, this one is definitely also viable, no question about it. So yeah, all these 3 are pretty viable, so whatever fits your comp playstyle, you know, all that jazz. Right, so we're gonna move on to Twisted Fate, or sorry, the 75 talent tier, which is the 5th one, yes. The one I've chosen is Twisted Fate, which is pretty basic. It's a passive, and after you heal a target below 35% health, this swaps out, of course, to dealing damage to a target below 35% if you're Shadow. You deal and heal 50% more for 10 seconds. Now combine this with the versatility, you're gonna have pretty nice extra healing. Actually, if you combine that with Archangels, a 5-stacked Archangels, you're gonna be healing for a shit ton. So this is the main reason why I picked Twisted Fate, because like in PvP, there's a lot of burst, right? And sooner or later, someone's gonna fall below 35%, and 35% is still pretty high. I mean, it's the dead zone between execute and having this talent procs. I mean, 15% dead zone is pretty okay, and even if someone gets into execute range that you're healing, you can still shield them and maybe save them anyway. So, but yeah, you can proc this, like you can have this up almost infinitely if you have a lot of targets, a low targets to heal, so to speak. I mean, it's a great talent. I use this like 8 out of 10 times. The one I can swap to sometimes if I feel like it is this one, which is Power Infusion, and it has 2-minute cooldown. It's a pretty long cooldown, but it lasts for 20 seconds, which is pretty great. It is, however, dispellable, so I wouldn't take this against like a big dispel team, as it will be pretty much useless, and then Twist of Fate would be a lot better, because I'm pretty sure this can't be dispelled, but I'm not gonna swear on it, but it might be non-dispellable, which makes it so much better than Power Infusion. But if you face a team where they don't have many dispels and you wanna increase that haste, just pump out as much healing as you possibly can and reduce your mana cost while you're doing it, this is definitely the spell for you. But yeah, as I said, the cooldown is pretty long, and you know, you're probably only gonna get to use it once per arena fight anyway, but in BGs and stuff, RBGs, it's definitely worth considering. Spirit Shell is the third talent in this tier. It was used quite a lot before, but this was actually before I started playing Priest. I'm pretty sure this was used in the early stages of WoD or in MoP even, if it was available, and I can't remember actually now. But I'm definitely sure most priests use this in the start of Warlords of Draenor, as they prefer more absorption shields rather than just pure healing, which is totally a totally fine strat that still works today. It's a 1-minute cooldown, and what it does is for the next 10 seconds your heal, flash heal, prayer of healing no longer heal, but instead they create absorption shields. So yeah, if you have time to spam the long heal cast, or even flash heal if you have the mana for that, you can rack up some pretty decent absorption numbers with this spell. However, if penance would be included in this, it would be really, really good. So if that were to be a change, I could definitely consider this talent, but I prefer just a flat healing output from Twist of Fate as of now. So that's why I'm sticking with this most of the time. Moving on to the level 90 talent tier, we have Cascade, Divine Star, and Halo, and this is sort of your flat healing, this 3 healing spells kind of tier, you know. So first we have Cascade, and as many of you may know, this spell is retardedly OP as Shadow. However, it doesn't feel as great if you're Disc or Holy, actually. I mean, it's not bad. It still bounces quite a lot of times, but if it doesn't crit, it doesn't really provide that much healing to like one target. It's literally like only that useful in like RBGs, maybe Ashran, you know, bigger battlegrounds with like 20, 30, 40 people, because then there's more targets to bounce between. But generally it kind of feels meh in PvP, and the cooldown is longer than Divine Star as well, which I'm gonna get to in a minute, in a second, sorry. Yeah, it's like kind of meh in my opinion. The mana cost is pretty nice, I guess, and it's a cost time as well, which Divine Star doesn't have, for instance. Divine Star has even lower mana cost. Actually, it's not that much. It's not like what, like 200 mana less, but it, you know, it has 15-second cooldown instead of 25. It's slightly lesser range, but it still gets the job done. And as I mentioned, in combination with Surge of Light, if you hit multiple targets, let me see if it works on the NPCs actually. No, it doesn't. It only works on players. But if you picture these NPCs as 2 players and you do the star right in between those, and it's gonna hit those 2 targets and yourself, you have 3 potential procs of the Surge of Light, and if you get 2 of them, you're gonna have a lot of instant healing output, which is hands down, in my opinion, like the best. In my opinion, for PvP anyway, which is what this guide is about. So, but yeah, moving on to the next one, Halo. It is the longest cooldown. It's it has the highest mana cost as well, but as I mentioned, it's not really that high. It has 40-second cooldown though, which makes it not really a good pick for me in PvP. However, if you were to position yourself correctly and get this off at a good time, you can get some pretty sick heals off at people at max range, but it requires a lot of positioning. It's kind of a hassle because you might not always be able to do that, seeing as you're going to get trained a lot because you're a Disc Priest and you're going to be slowed and all that stuff. So mostly because of those reasons, that it's a cast time and it has a long cooldown, Divine Star is the thing you're going to take here for PvP. So yeah. That's pretty much it. I'm not gonna go much more into that one. It's pretty much a no-brainer in my opinion for arena situations anyway, Divine Star. Moving on to the last tier of talents then, we have also actually kind of 3 flat healing outputs talents, I guess you could say. The first one is Clarity of Will. It costs 5k mana, it has no cooldown, which is pretty nice. However, the cast is pretty long. The yard is pretty long also, to compensate, I guess. But the 2.34 second cast is very, very long. But basically what this does is that it gives you just another big shield, really, in combination to your other 2 shields. I'm pretty sure this one is sadly also dispellable. I can't really remember. I haven't given it much thought and I haven't tried it too much yet, as Saving Grace is just too damn good. But I'm not gonna say, but I would imagine that this is dispellable as the other 3 bubbles, otherwise it would be probably hands down the best spell to get. So assume it's dispellable for now. I might put in an annotation after this when I'm done with the video, because I'm gonna actually go look that up for you guys. But yeah, this talent is it's actually pretty great. I might actually just spec it real quick just to show you guys, because I'm actually kind of curious as well how much absorption you can get. I mean, as you can see, the cast is pretty long, but if you get to free cast this, you can rack up almost with my gear, with my current gear, 705 PvP, you can rack up almost a 300k shield on top of your normal powered shield, which is like 65k, and then you crit with the penance, you get the Aegis as well. You're gonna be looking at very, very high absorptions. But as I mentioned, if this is dispellable, then you're pretty much gonna waste your time casting this. So yeah, I don't know. Kind of feels meh to me if it's dispellable, which I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. Moving on, Words of Mending is a passive, and your healing and shielding spell casts grant you a stack of Word of Mending, and when you reach 10 stacks, that's 10 casts you have to do for this to work. When you gain 10 stacks of Word of Mending, your next targeted healing or shielding spell also casts a Prayer of Mending at the target. Now, Prayer of Mending, in my opinion, is actually kind of underwhelming. I mean, I don't really think this talent has any viability in PvP at all. Because, I mean, sure, when the heal occurs, Prayer of Mending jumps to a party raid member within 20 yards, and if people are out of range, it's not going to bounce, and it's just going to be useless. And it already heals for quite a low amount. It's only 12k, 13k almost, non-crit. So, I mean, I would never take Words of Mending for PvP. For PvE, however, it's quite good. But for PvP purposes, I would never take this. But in the end, it's up to you how you play your priest. But I'm just saying, I would never pick this in a PvP situation. Yeah, moving on to the very last talent then, the bread and butter, I almost think, of the Disc Priest. This spell is so damn good. I don't even know where to go, but basically it's an instant cast spell. It has no cooldown, 40 yard range, pretty moderate mana cost, and it heals a target for 113,208. And this baby can crit as well. And if you have your trinket proc and it crits on the first cast before you get this reduction, combine that with archangels and yeah, just all that good stuff, you can get some stupid heals out, especially if multi-strike procs as well, which it does occasionally. And like, this spell is so much fun in any PvP situation, I'm telling you. Like, if you crit this, like in Ashran, for instance, if you have the Ancient Artifact, you can top someone with one of these. Like, it's so dumb. And even without that kind of situation, of course, I mean, 113,000 healing in an insta-cast with no cooldown is pretty nice. I mean, I guess you could say if you want that full 113,000, the cooldown would be 6 seconds for the saving grace to go away, but, I mean, the second cost is still 96k, the third cost is 79k, the fourth cost is 62k, which is still pretty nice. I mean, it's not until you get to the fifth cast, which is 50k or some shit, and the sixth cast, which is 28k, that's when you kind of want to stop. Like at 4 or 5 stacks, you want to, you know, cast something else, and like, unless you're in a very desperate situation where you can like fake cast and get a penance off, and you can easily just reset that stack and just get a 113k again, you know. So it's an incredible talent. I would take this any day of the week, in my personal preference, of course. For those who would like more absorption and shields, Clarity of Will is definitely the way to go. But yeah, this is mine. This is my personal preference, the saving grace. So I think we've covered all the talents. I think we're gonna be moving on to I think I'm just gonna cover glyphs real quick. There's no point making a separate video for these, as there aren't that many glyphs to swap between. There's a few, but it doesn't really take that long to mention, so I'm just gonna go through it. The glyphs that I swap between is a number of 5 glyphs, I think. The only one I use all the time and never swap out is the Glyph of Penance, which allows you to move while casting Penance, and the mana cost is reduced by 20%. But really, the fact that you can run and cast this is like pretty 10-10. And then you have the 2-set bonus, which gives you 50% movement speed increase while you Penance as well. So you can like heal, cast, kite this while running, which is pretty great. So this one you never really swap out. I wouldn't anyway. But the glyphs I do swap out are Shadowy Magic, which I use against heavy melee cleaves who are training me, and I need like a free heal, so a free cast, so to speak. So what it does is that it's basically like an aura mastery for paladins. Whenever you activate Fade, you are immune to silencing and interrupt effects. Oh yeah, also the cooldown on Fade is actually increased by 60 seconds, so yeah. Going back to me talking about Phantasm would actually make it a little bit more viable if you remove this glyph. So only in situations where you don't have to use this glyph, I guess you could theoretically use Phantasm instead of Angelic Feather if you feel like you're gonna get trained a lot by melee cleaves. But still, I mean, 60 seconds. I mean, Fade is still gonna have 30 seconds without this, so it's still pretty long in my opinion, but I don't know, maybe. I'm gonna do some testing of that and get back to you guys, don't worry, I promise. And then another glyph that I use is, of course, Reflective Shield. It causes 70% of the damage you absorb with your Power Word shield to reflect back to the caster. Now, as I said, my normal non-crit Power Word shield absorbs almost 65k damage. Now 70% of these is going to be dealt back to the caster, which should be roughly like 40, 45 maybe. That's a lot of damage. And this, I do believe this works when you put it on allies as well. If they hit your ally, it's going to reflect. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. So you can help DPS by doing literally nothing, by just healing. You can assist the damage done with your team. So it's a really good glyph to use against melee cleaves, in my honest opinion. It works against ranged as well, of course, but melee in particular, because you're gonna have them on you a lot of the time because they're melee and they're annoying and they should fuck off. But yeah, so these are 3 glyphs I'm having in my spellbook right now, but as I said, these 2 glyphs are entirely situational, and the glyphs I swap out is 2 is the Glyph of Inquisitor, for instance, and what this does is your Holy Fire and Power Word Solace deal an additional 25% initial damage, but 20% of the damage is dealt back to you. And then you might be telling yourself, but why would I want to take 20% damage to myself? But it's not really that much, as you can see. It's like 3k damage. You have almost 400k health. Get over it, you know. However, what this does is, since you're taking damage to yourself, this is essentially your old shadow word pain, which you can use to break sheeps. You can break traps. You can break fears. If you're very lucky, you can break a fear. You can break blind. You can break gouge. Anything that's not a hard CC, you can basically break if you time this correctly. Of course, you have to use this glyph for it to work. So I really like using this against especially mages and hunters, because I mean, unless the hunter, for example, is like having you in a stun, which you won't be able to use this, and he's gonna get a free trap. It's pretty much meh. Same with the mage. Unless he has you in a deep freeze, this is a great tool to have the mage or the hunter waste his time trying to CC you. So I use this against teams with heavy CC that you can break with damage, pretty much. TLDR. Of course, another glyph that I'm swapping to regularly, depending on if the team has any immunities, which is Paladin, Mage, Druid clones. You can MD Druid side clones with this, which is pretty great. You can really keep your teammates moving and doing substantial amounts of damage by removing the cyclones for them. It's pretty 10-10 in my opinion. And also using Master Spell overall is a great tool to just dispel like the entire map, both defensive and offensive dispels. So, you know, it's a pretty good talent. Definitely a must-have against mages and paladins. Depending on what classes the druids are playing with, you could go this against druids as well. I usually do this in twos, where I want to keep my DPS moving as much as possible, as triple clone is a bitch sometimes. Fade glyph is not something I use, but if you want 10% extra damage reduction, I mean, go for it, man. I mean, 30 seconds, you can get 10% damage reduction every 30 seconds. So, yeah, it's pretty okay, I guess. Another one you could use against like warlocks, UA warlocks. You could use Glyph Purify, and you can get a small heal every time you dispel as well, which you're gonna be doing a lot. You're gonna be dispelling a lot of the time, so that one can be used as well. Same one with this as well. However, this one shares sort of space with the reflective shield, so sadly you can't use both of them. But if you're not too bothered with the reflect damage and you just want more shields, this is a great one, because you can reduce the weakened soul from 12 seconds to 10 seconds, so that's pretty great. Just more flat out healing, really. Other than that, like, I don't have this glyph, but this one also shares slot with reflective shield and the weakened soul one. But if you want some more healing output, this one gives you 20% of the absorb of power word shield is converted into healing, which is pretty decent, I guess. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all the glyphs that you should consider using, and the situations you should be using them in. Yeah, I think I covered everything I wanted to cover in this video, actually. If you have any more questions or any constructive criticism, like if you want to discuss something, just let me know in the comment section below. I really enjoy answering your questions and discussing these things with you guys, as I might not be the super best player at all these classes that I'm doing guides on, but I do consider myself having sort of an idea of what to pick, and yeah, just basically just if you have any questions or anything, just let me know in the comment section below. Also, if you enjoy these videos, I'm going to be putting an annotation to the previous video, which I talk about gearing up and stat priority at the end of this video. But also, as I said, if you enjoy this video and you want to share it with your friends, that is greatly appreciated, as it helps me out a lot to grow my community. And also drop it a like as well. That also helps me out so much. Yeah, I think that's gonna be pretty much it for this video. Yeah, in the next video I'm gonna be talking about macros and some situations where yeah, just some usual spell rotations as a Disc Priest and how you can use these to your advantage when you're trying to fake and stuff. Like, it's gonna be sort of a spell usage educational video with some macros in them, pretty much. So stay tuned for that, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this time, guys. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.